I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is the TechCentral Show, brought to you today by MTN Business. Now, it's great to welcome Andile Ngcaba into the studio. Andile, it's been years. Are you well, sir?
It's not been years. We have been...
decades.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm good. I'm happy. I see...
The last time I saw you was in Cape Town, I think, at an event. It could have been AfricaCom.
Yeah, the usual AfricaCom, yes.
A couple of years ago, I think.
But you know, those events are quite busy. Everybody's running. But great to see the studio has grown and the business has grown, TechCentral has grown, and congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And Convergence Partners is 20 years old.
Yeah,
I can't believe it's been that long.
Investments, yes.
Investments, right.
Yes.
It's been 20 years since that business was founded. I can't believe. I thought it was about 10 or 15.
No, I left. Remember, Duncan, my previous job, I left in 2002, early 2003.
Yes.
Right.
You were the Director General in the Department of Communications.
Yeah. And
the Minister at the time was Ibi Masepe Kasuburi.
The Postmaster General.
You were the Postmaster General of South Africa.
Yes.
Wow. Does that role still exist?
No, it doesn't. Remember, it folded
Convergence
into... Yes, it folded into, and then it became one Director General.
Right.
Yes. But I was the last Postmaster General. So
what did being the Postmaster General involve?
Yeah. It involved a lot of things. I mean, you know, the entire philately ecosystem, representing the country in the Global Postal Union, you know, UPU, Regional Postal Union, and all the fora that deals with postal system.
Okay.
Right? It's remember, it comes from the family that my dad was a postmaster for close to 40 years.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where this ultimately landed up. My knowledge was, you know, born out of the post office, visiting the post office. And
so are you a philatelist?
I am still.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
okay.
Okay. There was, in fact, last year, during AfricaCom, in the second hall, South Africa Philately, community hosted a global philately conference.
Oh, wow.
Same venue as AfricaCom.
Amazing.
Yes. Huh. So I was exhibiting there my postal stamps, and I got an award.
Amazing.
I still get involved in the postal system. Yes.
So you must watch what's happening with the post office today with a bit of horror. What are your views of what's happened to the post office?
You can see from my breathing that...
Doesn't please you.
I don't have words. Yeah. It's painful.
Yeah. Okay. But you've been out of government for more than 20 years now. You're a businessman. You're an entrepreneur.
Stop calling me former DG.
Former DG.
No, I'm saying you always call me former DG.
Former DG.
And how can I be former when how many DGs have been there after me?
Yes.
So it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Literally 20 years.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your business. 20 years since Convergence Partners was founded. What was the original purpose? What were you trying to do with Convergence Partners?
I'll send you the presentation, my original presentation that I presented to Nedbank.
Yep.
Right? It's still there, as it is, no change. I mean, I was very clear. I mean, I'll send you the slides. It's a pity that you can probably, I hope your tech in the studio is quite cool to pull it up and show I'm going to talk about one or two of those slides, basically. So in one slide, I talk about having a satellite that's going to cover the rest of the continent, right, which we did. In the same slide...
I remember that, yes.
In the same slide, I talk about building submarine cables around Africa, right?
And you were an early investor in CCOM.
Yes. In the same slide, I talk about terrestrial fiber across the continent, which we did. In the same slide, I talk about the changes that are taking place in the vertical model of the way data and voice are seen to a much more application and horizontal model. I'll send you that slide too.
All right.
So I was very clear with the strategy, what one would like to achieve over the next, 10 to 15 years. So I went to a number of banks. I'm not going to mention the first bank that kicked me out. That said, you want to build satellites, what are these? And cables in the bottom of the ocean. Sorry, try Nextdoor.
And Nextdoor helped you.
Nextdoor, thanks to the guys who were at Nedbank, who listened to me and said, this sounds very interesting, and let's have a conversation. So I explained, I put together business models, business plans on how these things will work, right? And at that time, I was busy talking to a number of companies, including Dimension Data and many others. And that basically a number of the projects I had in that presentation, which will be shown in this show as I speak, right, were done. So NetBank then, who are still my partners, I work with them today, looked at that proposal, and we felt that, this is something that we can jointly look at, or they can back some of the things I wanted to do. Thanks to my colleagues, who later became my colleagues. Remember, Brandon, Stefan, and Idan were at NetBank at the time. I was a client at NetBank, right? And then presenting all of these. And thanks to the teams, various teams at NetBank, at CIB, it was called Netco then. My presentation has a Netco, basically a logo at the bottom left of the slide.
Who was running NetBank back then? Was it Richard Laupscher?
No, it was just in the transition to Tom Boardman.
Tom Boardman, okay.
Yes, it was just in the transition to Tom from Richard, right? And so it was in that era that I was talking to them.
Okay.
And the rest is history. So I've worked with NetBank. Great partner of ours. I will really strongly believe to continue. I will continue to work with them. They've supported it in all our initiatives. And really also, I hope they are happy with what we have also done from a returns point of view.
Well, take us through some of the investments you've made over the last 20 years. What were some of the highlights for you? What were some of the biggest deals you did?
So let me walk you through. There's of course, the satellite one. If you even look into the current strategy to 2035, we have satellites, what is called space tech in it, which I'm going to come back to it. Satellite, working with Intelsat to build satellite from scratch, right? Design it with them, and that will cover the rest of the continent. The satellite that would sit at 33 degrees east, still up there. It's now part of the Intelsat fleet because we sold the satellite to them. It's now called Intelsat 28. You can look at it at 33 degrees east.
Oh, IS-28. That's used by MultiChoice and others today.
Yes.
Well, that was originally, if I'm trying to remember back into the mists of time.
It was New Dawn satellite.
It was the New Dawn satellite, right?
It was New Dawn. That was our concept that we built that satellite for.
And then it was a joint venture with Intelsat.
Yes, we provided almost all the funding, the $250 million from the continent, including the portion of Intelsat.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we later sold it to them.
So Intelsat owns it 100% now.
Owns it now 100%. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But that is one of, your question was, what is it that I can highlight?
Yeah.
We're still covering the rest of the continent. So we're really very proud of that project. Two is we're very proud that we were part of SICOM. Myself, Brian, and the team, when they approached us.
That's Brian Hurley, the founder.
Brian Hurley, yes. And his team from New York. We worked with them as we launched, SICOM in Mozambique, Brian and I, when we tanned the soil. And, we went to Egypt, in almost all these lending countries.
Yeah.
And so we've seen SICOM, grow. SICOM is still part of the portfolio. Today.
You're still invested there, yeah.
Of course, we will continue to invest in
What is your investment philosophy? I think Convergence Partners, I think you describe yourself as a private equity player.
No. I will. Do you want me to explain that? There are two buckets,
okay,
basically, or three if you want. We have a permanent capital vehicle, right, which is the one we are talking about now, where the satellite has been, where the subsea cable has been.
Where you invest for the long term.
Where we invest for the long term. This is the permanent capital, okay? And that is Convergence Partners Investment. That is the 2003 structure.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
And in that structure, this is what we have now rebranded to be Solcon Capital. I will explain what that means, right? It's all about space. Now, that business basically is the one where Inala is the one where Sicom is the one where Dimension Data was, is the one where Telcom was, is the one where and Fiberco was, and all of that, And you can go to solcon.capital to see the portfolio of permanent capital vehicle.
Okay.
Then there's a private equity fund structure, right? This is where then your C-Track is, so that's the new fund. So you have Convergence Partners Communications Infrastructure Fund, which is the fund of 2013, basically. That is where in that fund your C-Squared is, Inc. is, that is where, for instance, that is where the data center in Nigeria called Rec Center is, and a number of those companies, right? Then again, a new fund that we closed early this year, which is Convergence Partners Digital Infrastructure Fund. This is where the companies such as C-Track are located. Basically, all the companies, 42 markets are located, etc. The companies that you might have seen the latest announcements and acquisitions, basically. So that's what you have. But we also have a small exposure in a VC fund, which is 4DI. The guys in Cape Town, I'm sure
Justin Stanford. Yes. Yeah, I remember when you launched that a few years ago. Yeah.
Yes. So we also have an exposure there.
Okay.
So that's how. So we have a permanent capital exposure. We have a private equity fund exposure and a VC fund exposure.
All right. At what point do you look to exit in your PE funds then?
So it's a 10-year fund.
10 years.
Yeah. So we hold for 10 years and exit, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically.
Or potentially reinvest after the 10 years if it makes sense?
Well, remember we have other investors in the fund. Depending, basically. Fund rules are fund rules.
Right.
But of course, depending if something is quite interesting, we can always look at it. But we usually have that period of time. Yes.
Okay. So what was the thinking about coming up with the name Solcon Capital? Why change the name from Convergence Partners Investments?
So very good. So what is happening is that, as you were asking, I spend a little bit of time in California and here now, and in Southeast Asia, in particular India and Singapore. So we are in Solcon Capital or in Convergence Partners Investment. We are growing in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific. Okay? That is why we have appointed Pramod Venkatesh, who is well schooled in tech, with experience in California, with experience in Silicon Valley, in the startup ecosystem, in matured businesses. Pramod was part of Geo when Geo was starting. He comes out of Cisco. He basically has a very good experience in Indian companies going to California. So Pramod is now the CEO, basically. So we will have, investments in India, Southeast Asia, an office in Singapore to grow the portfolio of Convergence Partners Investments.
Interesting. So you're going global because historically you focused on Africa.
That's the purpose. We are building a global platform with Solcon Capital, full global platform of tech. Yes.
And do you launch new funds under Solcon Capital to
watch that space? That's the part that is going to be interesting. Not funds, but remember we're permanent capital. But the companies that we will be announcing, basically, that are going to form part of that.
Yeah.
And most of them are not in the African continent, basically, but they have services they deliver in the African continent. Right? These are pure software. Now, there are 4 areas of focus of Solcon Capital. One is AI, generative AI. 2 is Web3. 3 is space technology. And 4 is cybersecurity. You can look at the website, you'll see all of the 4.
All fast-growing areas.
Yes. Yeah. So what is Solcon Capital? Solcon Capital is, if you go back to solar constant, which is the amount of sun rays coming into a square meter of the earth, is measured in watts to a square meter. Basically, a solar constant, that's what it is. So we've decided to name that with that because of the amount of interest we will be putting in the space tech environment.
Yeah.
in microsatellites, in CubeSats, in collecting data in space and productizing it, whether for agri, whether for urbanization, whether for communications. We are going to be spending a lot of time building space technology companies, investing in space technology companies. And that pipeline will be converted and announced very soon, basically. So that is why we have chosen, I have chosen, to call it Solcon Capital. But there's another meaning of Solcon, which you will pick it up in the book that I've talked to you about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what is happening is that the way in which the Solcon investment thesis is, as I've said, permanent capital in those 4 areas that I've explained, is a global platform. Basically, we're building a global platform, and that is what we are doing.
Focused on emerging markets?
A global platform.
So both?
Both, yes. That's what we're building.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So you look for investments in Europe, North America,
We have
across the board?
we have already some exposure in those markets too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as a good example, for the fund, we have acquired a business in Sweden, basically for ink, which is an orchestration layer, not a full business, but part of a business, right? And some of the companies we have in Solcon already are operating in North America. They are operating in Asia Pacific, etc. So it's not like a new environment. Our portfolio companies today operate across all parts of the world. Put it like this. In a cloud software-centric environment, there are no borders, to be honest with you. You create borders in your own mind. So why, for instance, anybody who's going to listen to this show, once it's live, is anywhere in the world. I'm not sure, you're not producing this show only for South Africa. You're producing this show for the rest of the planet.
So interesting. Web3, I've heard some people saying Web3 doesn't exist.
No, let me tell you.
Yes.
Let me give you an example, okay? Let me finish first. I'll come back to Web3. Let me finish. So that's what Solcon is. Solcon is solar constant, right? But look at the logo, 1011. You know what that is? It's a binary code,
yeah.
which is relaunched, rebooted in 2023. 10 is 2, 11 is 3. 23, which is the year we are in. That's how the logo was.
Okay, I'll have a look at that logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Web3, you think it's a real thing? I've seen some Silicon Valley luminaries suggesting that it's all BS and that it's created by venture capitalists.
No, Web3, look at blockchain, okay? Take NVIDIA as an example. NVIDIA with GPUs, apart from original gaming, the next wave was minting, the next wave was mining, blockchain mining. And the new wave now is all generative AI using the same GPUs, which have been used for gaming, right? To mining, blockchain mining, to now more training and inference for purposes of LLMs and generative AI. So what I'm saying is that Web3, let's take the telecom sector, which is the sector you love most, right? If you take, for instance, fixed wireless access, today in Web3, I'm not going to talk about DEWI. I'm not going to talk about DeFi, which is on the financial side. Let me talk about telecom to make relevance to this. If you talk about DEWI, right, the wireless distributed architecture, it's the use of blockchain. So in this complex, you will have a DEWI model whereby you share your connectivity as a pool between various companies that are in this complex. That's where basically this thing is. Instead of each one of you having fixed wireless access, basically. If it is not DEWI on the wireless side, it's going to be DePIN on the fixed side, right? Physical infrastructure, where you use blockchain again there in order for you to have a shared access model. So these are two critical applications of blockchain or Web3 in the telecoms environment. So blockchain as a technology is growing phenomenally. It will continue to grow. Let's leave the flowery aspects that usually people focus into. Forget about all the the tokens and crypto and all of that stuff, that will go up and down. I mean, and it will at some point stabilize that it gets more regulated. Regulations are important. The only way that part of Web3 will work is when regulators are able to provide clarity in that environment, right? There will be, I'm a strong believer of asset-backed, basically, digital assets, right? That will continue to happen. Leave the speculation of this industry aside, but talk about blockchain as a technology to be used in examples of DePIN and DeWi that I've talked about, or DeFi, right? Or asset-backed financing, basically. That is how this environment will grow. But every industry, as you know, has speculators.
Right.
But over time, speculators tend to, become, etc. So that's how I believe that Web3 is going to grow, no doubt about it.
Okay. So four building blocks: generative AI, Web3, space technology, and security. What assets does Solcon Capital have in those four areas currently?
Okay.
And what are you looking at in terms of building where you don't have expertise?
Good question. One, we have invested in Asset, which is a cybersecurity business, right? We also have CBMS, which is also in border management, basically. That's a security game, right? In Web3, when I was looking at your studio, please go and buy some stuff at Inala. We can give you Inala broadcast, right? We can create more a Web3 environment for you, or a metaverse environment, where Duncan is on metaverse and is able to talk to people on metaverse.
So I need to sit here with my Apple reality.
No. You don't have to do that, basically. So what I'm saying is that you look at Inala, on the content side, that's growth on the side of Web3, right? And then you also look at companies like Ngcaba, basically. Ngcaba is quite involved in, more that UX, UI, customer satisfaction, client management, etc., right? And then if you take, a number of, other companies in that space, that they are involved in AI. We have invested in LifeQ, as you know, which is a wearable business.
Interesting company
Extremely, right? So if you look at the website of Solcon Capital, you will see that, there are some companies in these four boxes, but the future investments also will be in these four boxes. There's nothing more important, Duncan, than focus. I focus in tech, but even in tech, you choose where you want to focus rather than to spray everywhere and hope that, I don't do that. This strategy of these four areas is our 2035 strategy, basically.
Okay.
We will be pursuing, we will unveil that strategy on the 25th of October when we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Solcon Capital or Convergence Partners Investments. Right? That is where we will unveil the 2035 strategy, where these four areas, we go deeper into explaining them, and we would probably share with you some of the companies that we are investing in at that time.
How much funds? What's the correct English term? How much funds? How many funds? How much money? A better phrase. Has Convergence Partners and its various funds invested with its investment partners to date?
So the current fund, the new fund launch is about 296 or 300 million if you round it up.
US dollars.
Yes. The previous fund, the 2013 fund, basically was about just under $200 million. Basically.
So it's just over 500 now, yeah?
Yeah, and then the early fund was the Convergence Partners, I think, was just around 100.
About $100 million. Yeah. Okay, so just over $600 million. So it's over 20, do the maths in my head, about 20 to 23 billion at the current exchange rate. It's a big chunk of change. No, my maths is terrible. Yeah. There's 1, 2, 6, 12, This is why I'm a journalist and not an engineer, Andile. I'll leave it to our readers to work it out. But
so what do you do? If you say you round it up at 600,
yes,
you want to use the current exchange rate.
612. It's about 10 billion rand, just over 10 billion. Is that right?
What are you using to multiply 6
18.
multiplied by 18? Yeah.
Yeah, it's about that.
Yeah.
All right. My maths isn't too bad. And so what are your investment plans over the next, say, 10 or 15 years? Are you going to look at investing a similar amount of money or even more potentially?
Let's take, let me talk more here about Solcon Capital. Okay.
Sure.
So in Solcon Capital, I've talked about those 4 areas, right? The question would be, are we going to go back and build satellites? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In partnership with an Intelsat or on your own?
Watch this space.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are going to get into space technology, basically not only just build satellites, but look at applications of space, basically. And it's an area which we are going to be driving quite aggressively.
Interesting.
Yes, because space technology is coming back in a way that,
where's your interest? Low Earth orbit, medium?
So
geostationary?
We will be involved in all the low Earth orbit, middle Earth orbit, geostationary, basically. Not just at launching satellites, but applications. To give an example, we are now working with a company that is looking at mapping of weather, basically, using microsatellites.
Interesting. Okay. So
you were asking, are we going to be investing a lot in Solcon Capital?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. In these 4 areas, basically, but we're building more global platforms, as I've said.
Yeah.
Can I name companies today?
Not yet.
Not yet. But...
And presumably you're still interested in investing in African countries as well, companies as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Convergence Partners, that is the focus of Convergence Partners Digital Infrastructure Fund, is to invest in Africa. So you have to deal with these things in different buckets, as I've said. Yeah, because the focuses are different and the geographies are different. Yeah.
There's a bit of breaking news this morning, actually. I saw in my inbox that you've invested in a company called Yellow.
Yes.
They are a financing company that provides funding around solar in homes. Is that right? And small businesses as well?
Small businesses as well. But also they're involved in mobile financing also.
So which fund has invested
this
in
is
Yellow?
CIPDIF. This is Convergence Partners Digital Infrastructure
Digital
Fund.
Infrastructure Fund. Tell me a bit about Yellow and why you've invested in them.
Yellow has a very interesting footprint in the continent, basically. And not just basically, if you look at different products they have, they are a perfect fit for Convergence Partners Digital Infrastructure.
Are they a
Fund.
South African company?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a South African company, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you guys have no...
Who's behind them? Who's the founder? Who's
look at it online. I will walk you through them just a minute. So the company basically, are young entrepreneurs of South Africa. We have expanded to Malawi. We've expanded into a number of countries using this product, basically. And they are able to finance this, including mobile devices, including, a lot of stuff that are related, more what we today call, green energy tech, basically. And this they've developed a very unique model, which is very attractive. In particular, remember, Duncan, we are an impact investor. This has a huge impact in lower income groups and society. Basically, the way people need energy to use for a variety of services, including, mobile devices, including, for instance, ability for them to recharge mobile devices and be able to use energy for communications or energy to switch on the lights or energy to cook. Because there's an integration now that is happening. Sometimes in other areas, semi-rural areas, people would move from one place to the other simply to go and plug their phone. So what really Yellow is doing is providing every home an ability to have this universal access of both a device, and also an ability to switch on the lights.
Without a huge upfront cost.
Without huge upfront cost.
Yeah.
So it's something that fits the investment thesis of Convergence Partners, basically this new fund. And also the good thing is that the footprint they have across the continent is what is very attractive to us.
Yeah,
So-
good stuff. How has the investment landscape for you changed over the last couple of years? I mean, the business cycle has shifted. We're in a high interest rate environment now as the US Fed tries to fight inflation and central banks around the world are lifting rates. We've seen certainly developed world venture capital funds pulling back from investments in emerging markets, including Africa. Is that an opportunity for Convergence Partners?
Let me put it like this. Your last part, I mean, you are really spot on. I mean, look, whether you go back to 2008, whether you go to 2000, you can go back in these cycles of liquidity crunch. I mean, that's when innovation comes, right? If you go back, I say the Satoshi paper came at the time when we were all basically looking everywhere because of the 2007-8 crunch. I mean, the blockchain innovation was born during that time, right? You now look at generative AI in the middle of all the characteristics that you talk about in as far as the market, what the Feds are doing, interest rates, basically, the lack of liquidity in the market. But look what came about. NVIDIA crossed 1 trillion, right? And we now see generative AI adoption as the dominant technology that's going to shift everything we do. So there's always, if you now go back, whether you take 3 decades, you will see these, times where tech or the economy, whether in some cases it could be triggered by financial services, in other cases by tech, in other cases by other industries, in other cases by COVID or by war or, all of this, where you then get that V shape that happens. There's something that takes our industry out of that, that becomes the trigger for excitement and new investments. And people believe that, look, I don't want to miss the next wave. If you remember, after 2007-8, there was very little conversation about cloud. But cloud started. If you remember, we were talking to you about the cloud we were doing in our previous organization when we bought that company, OpSource, etc. You remember early days before you then saw post-2008, cloud started to emerge and cloud became the driver of the industry post that crisis of 2008. Post this crisis, right, generative AI is going to be the driver of the next wave of tech growth. So,
do you think it's going to lead to a productivity boom that some people have suggested, that once these tools are integrated into things like Microsoft Office, that it's literally going to raise global productivity and keep it there forever?
My view, if your company, I don't know, you must look at FinGPT. FinGPT, right? If, let's give an example, you are in an asset management firm, or you do, for instance, portfolio analysis in an investment firm, looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 companies, comparing them as to which one you invest in. How long does it take for you to go to Bloomberg, pull that data, or go to Reuters, pull that data, or get, for instance, sentiment data from media to try and give a proper analysis of, say, a cluster of the companies you want to look at, compared to what FinGPT can do for you, basically. This is something launched just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Right? What would be done by an analyst, an equities analyst, over a period of, let's say, to produce a paper over a period of a month.
Instant.
Yeah.
One wonders what the quality is there.
The quality will improve over time.
It will, yeah, it will.
In the same way, if you remember being Google Search or DuckDuckGo or Brave, any of the search engines, right? They were not at, the quality of the outcome of search.
Yeah.
I mean, in the algorithms that they run, but over time, these things are able to give you that level of, even in any analysis, whether you do it as an individual, right?
Yeah.
Where you are collecting data from multiple sources, you want to do comparison of A, B, and C, there's still an error or an correction that you won't get that to 99.9% because there's subjectivity in the way you compare data from multiple sources. You might use raw numbers data, but there's sentiment data that comes out of, reports, journalists, media that you don't factor, basically.
Have you made any investments in the generative AI space yet?
We are busy with that.
Busy with that. I'd imagine that the upstarts or startups in the space are very well valued. This is the exciting area in tech now.
But there are many ways to enter the space, right? For these companies, the cost is in the training, the engine, the GPUs that you hire
NVIDIA.
or you buy. And inference that you have to run them.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money. There are many ways to invest in this. Either you can invest in infrastructure and be able to attract companies to come and do that in infrastructure by taking equity in them. So there are a couple of models that we are looking at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen it suggested that NVIDIA is the only company really making money out of generative AI so far.
No. They're great companies. If you take companies like Hugging Faces and a number of them, they're companies who are doing very well. They're doing extremely well.
And I'm sure Microsoft's going to figure out how to make money out of this in
not just
due
them.
course.
Look at Bard. Bard is coming up, from Google also very well.
Yeah.
So look, this is going to become the largest part of our industry by 2030.
Wow, that's quite a prediction to make. The largest part of our industry by 2030.
The largest part of our industry by 2030 will be generative AI. And if you are not part of it, you might as well retire.
I'm interested to see how generative AI impacts journalism because it introduces all sorts of ethical considerations as well.
Put it like this, Duncan. We have grown the internet with dark web as a sister part of it. Am I right? And it exists, and we know it exists, right? There's always a bad side in technology, and we need to accept that. And we as practitioners, me and you, must make people aware of that, whether is the internet as we know it, right, or whether generative AI or AI and the biases that it will have, right, we must make people aware, right? And we must try and come up with a core regulatory model between nation states and business or industry to find best ways to make sure that this thing is properly regulated.
So, Andile, you've spent considerable time traveling the world. You've spent a lot of time in Africa. How many African countries have you visited, by the way? Every single one?
Almost, yes.
There must be one or two you haven't been
to. No. I've been to Mauritania, if you want, and coming down this way.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've also spent time in the US. You moved to Silicon Valley. And you lived there for several years.
Yeah. I'm still commuting back and forth. Yeah.
Tell me a bit about what it's like, what it is like to live and work in that environment in Silicon Valley, and what lessons you've taken out of it, and what you think South Africa and Africa can learn from Silicon Valley and do better that perhaps we aren't doing.
So here where it comes from. You remember in my previous life, we created that advisory structure of a number of Silicon Valley companies. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that. Is this when you were the DG?
When I was the DG, remember we had that presidential ICT advisory
Yes, I remember
structure,
that, yes.
where the CEO of Microsoft, of Oracle.
Yes.
You remember?
That was Thabo Mbeki.
Yes. They would come in here once a year and meet the country's leadership.
Larry Ellison was on
Larry Ellison was there. Carly Fiorina was there. Bill Gates was there, you name it, right? So I organized that to happen. I was almost facilitating, even the CEO of SAP, if you remember, Hasso Plattner. Yeah, all of them, they would come down. Meetings sometimes would be in different places of the country, right? So I kept that relationship with that community, basically, at the time, because I was almost convening those meetings together with the former president and his cabinet to meet that community once a year, just to get a view from the leaders of the tech industry of the time as to where the industry is going, and put our political leadership in front of them. So I kept that relationship. Not only that, because the companies that we invested in from 2003, most of the products come from Silicon Valley, whether it's Cisco products, whether Avaya, whether Microsoft. All our portfolio companies are built using Silicon Valley companies, right? So by spending time in Silicon Valley, it was more to immerse myself into our partners, right? One, but also get an understanding of the ecosystem as to how it works. Silicon Valley or the Bay Area is a state of mind. I mean, Duncan, it's not about buildings. It's about people who live tech. They eat tech for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or midnight snack if you want. Weekends, it's all about tech. That is
they live and breathe it.
They live and breathe it. I mean, and that is what really for me, I mean, is fascinating. That's what I do. I live tech 7 days a week.
You must have felt right at home.
Yes. So to take that, and I mean, you don't only meet U.S. citizens. There are people there from India. There are people there from Eastern Europe. There are people there from Europe. I mean, Western Europe. There are people there from Latin America who all are coming into this well of tech to either bring their startups or their businesses or to learn or to partner or to do whatever. And where I met the current CEO of Solcon Capital was there, right? And we started to work together. And then I invited him to come. He became a CTO of Inc. for the last 4 years, and he's now the CEO of Solcon Capital, right? There's a strong relationship between the Bay Area, specifically what is called Silicon Valley, and what is happening in Bangalore, right? The movement of people, a lot of Silicon Valley companies have tens of thousands of people working from Bangalore, providing tech platforms for them at a global level. That is for that reason now we are putting an office at Solcon Capital in Bangalore in order for us to be able to increase, which we are active already in Bangalore, to increase our development base that is going to provide services across our companies globally. The same way as everybody's doing in California.
Yeah. Andile, I know you're out of time, but I'm going to squeeze in one last question. Given your experiences in Silicon Valley, there's been a lot of talk over the years in South Africa about building a Silicon Valley or a Silicon Savannah or whatever it is.
Let me tell you, Silicon Valley is a state of mind.
State of mind.
It's not
you can't just replicate it.
It's not about buildings. It's not about that. Yes, you need that infrastructure, but you need people, right? It's a culture. It's a way of life. Both those who are involved in investments, those who are involved in tech, those who are entrepreneurs, it's the building of that ecosystem. You don't build it in physical buildings. It is about people working together, collaborating, going to market together, competing, and be able to innovate.
And
these are from schools, universities, entrepreneurs. So it's the entire ecosystem that's able to function together. So what really I would advise for anyone who's wanting to champion this, it's about collaboration. That's what it is, to be honest with you. These guys have figured out how to collaborate with computer science departments at universities, with research institutions, with entrepreneurs, with venture capitalists, with angels, with people who want to invest, with the market. It is that ecosystem that works like hand in glove.
And you can't just replicate that.
You can. I mean, you take India, for instance. India is now the biggest source of talent and knowledge. All the top tech companies in Silicon Valley are managed and run by Indians. Middle management, CTOs, CEOs, are most of them. You count all of the trillion-dollar companies, $500 billion companies, $100 billion companies are these guys. How have they built that? It's knowledge, it's skill, it's education.
Education is at the core of it.
That is where this thing starts.
Have we got any chance in South Africa of replicating what India has done?
Look, India has 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Okay, they produce 1 million engineers out of the universities in India. We can do it. It does not have to be that scale. Take Israel for an example.
Yeah.
They have created an innovative state. They've done it. You know what I'm saying? Of course,
A lot of it's defense spending that's been directed into.
Yes, yeah. But they've made themselves to become this center of innovation. I mean, you talk about Waze, you talk about, Google and everybody. They've got centers of research there. So it is possible. I mean, you take what South Africa has become in the data center space. That's one area we can latch on, right? And become a global hub of data centers. You don't become everything. I mean, I don't believe I'm not an expert in everything. You choose a very narrow area to focus on. That's what I'm saying. I have to leave. Thank you
have to
very
leave.
much.
Andile Ngcaba, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for talking to TechCentral. We could carry on all afternoon.
I know.
Let's schedule another session sometime.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yes.